This is the culture.
Welcome back to another episode of Cinema Wave Podcast. My name is Liz Seiko. I will be one of your hosts today, and I am joined by Michael Peniston.
Hello, guys.
Mikey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Liz?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Okay, so today Mikey and I are going to be talking about the season 3 of Only Murders in the Building that just wrapped up last week. We're going to be talking about everything in this season, some of info from season 1 and season 2. So if you haven't seen any of this show, probably not the best episode for you because we are going to be talking about some spoilers, but you should go check out some of our other episodes on our YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music because we have a lot of great conversations. But jumping into this topic, Mikey, why don't you tell me kind of when you first started watching Only Murders and like what did you start it from season 1 or did you hear about the hype of it and then start watching it?
Yeah. So I started watching Only Murders during COVID, actually. I think that was around when, or I think it was during COVID, I believe. It was after season 1 had already come out.
Okay.
Season 2, I think, was like halfway through it at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd heard about it through my cousins, I think it was, to be honest. They had been like really just raving about it. Being like a good mystery show.
Okay.
Which at the time I didn't really know of, to be honest. Like a lot of like just like
solid, who done it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, without it being kind of gimmicky or like, and so I decided to watch it, and I decided to watch it from season 1, and so I watched it straight through, and I've been watching it since then, and it's held up. It's held up to what they said. You know, it's been a good mystery show, and. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So just for viewers, I totally just binged this show completely from season 1 to the final episode that just came out last week, literally within probably, I want to say like 2.5 weeks. A lot of information. Yeah, I started watching it because we knew that we were going to do an episode on this. And so I was like, okay, let me jump on this, dig deep and kind of like start forming my opinion. Season 1 for me was interesting and I liked the concept.
Okay. Not
my favorite show though, because I'm going to tell you because I feel like the whodunits aren't my favorite because they almost dip away in the middle episodes and to come back into the ending. So like I found myself mostly in like season 2 and season 3, like I'd be into episode 1 and episode 2 and then like 3 through 8 I was kind of like, okay, I know they're not the person. I know they're not the murderer. So like, get them out of here. Who is it going to be? And then they would always bring it down to like between 3 people. And then I end up just being like, okay, it's probably going to be that person. But you know what I really love about this show that I think they do great with keeping their audience interested is they connect their seasons really well.
They do. That is a strong point of theirs.
Yeah,
yes.
I love that actually because I think with the show like this, they could so easily end a season and then lose viewers because it's like, okay, that murder was wrapped up. Then on episode 1 of the next season, let's start fresh. But rather than at the last possible second of the final episode of season 1, they show the next murder for season 2. And then at the last second of episode 10 for season 2, they show you the next murder for season 3, which I think just keeps people in the loop.
Keep it engaged, keeps it going sort of thing. Definitely feel like it is a strong point of theirs only because it does keep the viewer interested. It keeps them engaged in what keeps going and what's to keep happening. But other than that, I feel like what you were saying was just really like very true. I feel like season 1, honestly, the whole show, it has like a certain sort of mature, I feel like, vibe to it that when I first watched it too, it kind of caught me off guard. I thought it was good, but I thought it was like even the humor is just very grown. To be honest, I think it's because it's a grown cast, to be honest. It's like it's older people at this point when we're dealing with
I mean legends. It's like 2 classic actors, Martin Short and Stephen Martin, who are just incredible actors. But I feel like I think in season 1 they do really well job of having enough content for both older viewers and younger viewers because then they also bring in Selena Gomez, who is able to get those early on viewers.
Yes.
And so I like season 1 the most just because I think they make jokes about the younger generation not really understanding the older generation, and then vice versa, the older generation not really getting the younger. And they're able to make fun of that. But then as the seasons go on, I think they kind of lose those different opposite point of views because they start to merge the characters where they're just all a friend group. Yeah, and I want to know your opinion. Do you like the point of view of them starting a podcast together, or do you think, like, what are your thoughts on that? Do you like that point of view?
So I do like that point of view a lot, actually. I feel like that was one of the things that kind of kept it grounded to it, keeping it more normal, keeping it honestly more intriguing, I guess you could say, too, just because it made them feel just like regular people. It made it feel like, at the time, podcasts too were really taking off.
Huge.
You know, it was
literally
a really big thing. So it was just like almost like you were watching like just like another group of people following that trend at the time. But it worked too, because at the same time, I feel like true crime. True crime is always kind of just like a big thing. You can never really miss.
Well, I feel like true crime was the podcast theme that like made everybody start listening to podcasts in the beginning. Was like, oh, I'm listening to like Crime Junkie and all of these and like hearing about these murders going on while I'm walking my dog.
Oh yeah, even if it is a story based, you're right.
Yeah.
It was always something that was always very prevalent. So to see it now with these legends, like you said, Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez, I feel like it just felt a lot more, I don't know, welcoming. It just felt a lot more just normal. I guess that's the word I can really find out of that. And I like not only that, but each of their personalities in the show, like how you said, it's like Selena Gomez representing like that more modern side of things, and the older guys representing the older, mature humor and everything like that. I feel like it works in the sense of a podcast with all of those elements combined. You know, the what's it called? The true crime at being at that height, and the podcast being at the height that it was at like that at that time. And so,
do you think, I have a thought on this. Do you think that they kind of forgot about the podcast element in the third season? Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why the third season wasn't too favorable for me, to be honest. I feel like that was always another strong point of theirs. You know? It was because it was so grounding. And it was, the story always kind of ran through the podcast. You know, it was like they were always figuring out these clues and everything, and then they would bring it back to the podcast, which the season 3 did not do at all.
No, and I think that's why things were kind of, for me, I kept dipping out of this season when I was watching episodes because I just kept forgetting storylines of like, wait, what is the relevance of this character again? And I think it's because they forgot a little bit of the podcast element, because in season 1 and season 2, they do a really nice job of tracking like us as the audience are also the audience of the podcast. So when they tell us something in the show, they're also like revealing it as like their podcast episode.
Yes.
So if they lead us onto a character and then it ends up not being that character, they almost are like, oh, we already put the audience like on that track. Now we need to do a rebuttal and show why we're not doing that anymore. And I feel like in season 3, they were just like, it's this person. Actually, no, it's this person and it's this person, but could it be this person? And then all of a sudden I was like, I don't care anymore. Like, just show me who murdered. Who was the murderer?
Yes. Not only that, I feel like they were so separated this season. And I mean, you could tell that was definitely done on purpose.
Yeah.
And we can come back to that just because I feel like that will play more into going forward into season 4. But yeah, I feel like the 3 of them always being together with the podcast being a strong suit of theirs. I feel like that was always just kind of what kept the story kind of grounded. You know, this was all over the place. Like you said, there were way too many characters to this season.
Yes.
And like, they're good for every season having a good amount of characters. And a lot of them are these, like, you could tell they like to drive these cameos, these guest star cameos. But it was way too much with them not being connected enough. You know, it was like you were really now following each thing. And it was a lot to keep up with. I agree. I wonder if for you, just because this season was so different than the rest, do you think that bringing in all these characters and having them kind of on their own side quest sort of thing, and not really, because at one point they also broke up. That was like a big kind of big theme, I guess, in this, them being separated for a reason, a lot of headbutting and stuff like that. But do you think that that was smart? Do you think that that was a smart choice to go with this season, having them separated like that?
I think it was a smart decision. I don't think they let it play out enough, though. I think that I think the breakup only lasted over like maybe 2 episodes, maybe 3.
Yeah.
I think that it should have been like a season-long breakup. And almost, because Selena Gomez character Mabel, she goes off and kind of does like her own few episodes. And then all of a sudden, Oliver and Charles, the characters played by Martin and Steven, start finding out that she's doing these other episodes and are like, oh my God, she's going off on her own. I wish that it had been like her doing her own podcast, them doing their own, but then them realizing in like the final 2 or single last episode, realizing that they need to do it together in order to find out who the actual murderer is. I feel like it could have been a great storyline for them to then come back together to actually figure out the murderer. Like, I don't even remember in the season why they actually started working together again. I really couldn't tell you. I'm like, okay, they broke up and then Mabel got like sad or something and was like, I miss them. And then all of a sudden started working with them again. I think I could totally be wrong about that because I really don't remember. So I liked that storyline. I just don't think they leaned into it enough. I also think, so they had heavy hitter cameos this season. I mean, Meryl Streep alone, like that, you expect greatness. I think what happened though, I think that the writers maybe knew that this season was kind of going to be a lull, and so they were like, okay, we need to get some like showstopper names on this season in order to get people still hyped about it. Because don't get me wrong, Meryl did an incredible performance. I thought that she was really great in leaning into like character roles. I don't know if like her performance is like the best one I've ever seen from her, but it was definitely TV warranted, like kind of like gimmicky.
Yeah, and I think it was definitely, I could understand that reaction too, because she was playing like her character had to be acting bad on purpose.
Yes,
you know what I mean. So it is like a weird sort of thing where you're watching like a legend pretend to be bad, you know,
which is like incredible acting at the end of the day, is to be able to be confident in yourself, to be like, okay, I know I need to be a bad actor right now, so I'm gonna be a bad actor.
So it was like a weird, I could see how it was like a weird sort of like on both sides, like oh wow, she's doing a great job being a bad actor, but she's still playing a bad actor. So I could see how it was nothing too great, but still a great Meryl Streep performance.
Yes.
But I think it was important that they brought her in, just because like you said, this season,
I think they knew. I think they were like, okay, this isn't living up to the other seasons. I also think I think they just lost their pillars. Like the 2 pillars of this show, Only Murders in the Building, is literally in the name, that it's only murders in the building. And technically this murder was in the building, but really it wasn't. It took place on a Broadway show, like in the theater. And somehow Paul Rudd's character didn't die there, and instead he like dies in the hotel, which I feel like was reaching a little bit, just so that they could wrap this story up and bring it back to the podcast. So I think like the 2 main points of having it be a podcast and a murder in the building were already kind of weak. And if that's what their show is built on, to have those points be weak, just leads to a weaker season. And so that's why I think they went to hard hitting actors like Meryl Streep, Ashley Park, Paul Rudd. They even had Matthew Broderick as like a cameo at one point, which I thought was really funny.
His character was interesting. It's very.
But on the other hand, I also think they did a really nice job of kind of doing like a hat tip to Broadway and making it more of like a homage to Broadway shows, and like how much heart and soul actually goes into making musicals come to stage. So I think that was nice. Also, like for Martin Short, I think he was able to flex his acting wings a little bit more than in past seasons.
Yeah. Were you a fan of that storyline, you know, being that like, because I agree that, you know, he was able to flex more of like that musical side, that more animated side, even just through the whole storyline and that. But were you a fan of his storyline and like even down to like the anxiety through it all and stuff like that.
I think so. I think I liked this one a little bit more than, because in the past he's just been like the quirky musical guy who's broke.
Okay.
And so this, I think they did a nice build up of the past 2 seasons up to his character of like, this is what he's been working for.
Okay.
And I actually felt like his character had a lot to lose. Versus, yeah, like I bought it. And especially like the moments when he was having heart attacks, like I was like, I could see this, like this man's whole life is riding on like this show that keeps having murders involved in it, so like he's willing to risk it all. But yeah, I thought that the show, it was interesting, but they just lost their main points. But my question for you is, in past seasons, were you able to figure out who the murderer was before they revealed it? In like season 1 and season 2?
Yes. To be like 100% honest, like, and I think that this is probably like a weak point of the shows. It's very predictable. It is like super predictable. Big spoiler, but this season alone, I probably like knew who the killer was gonna be.
Yeah.
You know, probably second episode, that being Cliff, I believe was his name. I mean Donna, his mom. But it's I think that's in the writing, to be honest. Each season, they will have the murder be such an important part of the story, but not like a super like it's not like you're dealing with like one of the main characters, like, to be honest. So I'll give you a perfect example, because that was not too clear. This season, last season, let's use example, Jan being the murderer, who was Steve Martin's love interest for the season. I feel like she was very important in the sense that it was Steve Martin's love interest. You know what I mean? But aside from everything going on, she wasn't that involved in the actual murder storyline. Exactly. You know what I mean? But it was still kind of important. And Cliff and Donna being kind of in that same boat, I guess. Maybe it could just be how I see it, but being in that same sort of boat where they're still kind of crucial to the story in the sense that they're the producers of the whole musical, the whole important part of the whole season. But they're still not like they're necessarily there connected to like the actual murder throughout the whole thing. Exactly. And I'm trying to remember season 1, who even was the murderer, to be honest. Season 1 was Nathan Lane's son. That's right. The deaf guy. Yes. That's right. Again, another character who is involved without being like fully they just do a really nice job of not making it obvious in the first couple episodes, but then I feel like in like episode 8 so each season it goes like to 10. Usually episode 8 is when you're like, I know who it is. Exactly. They couldn't, and they try to like episode 10 be like, oh wait, like they'll like kill someone. Like, but it's like, oh, all right, like it still isn't as exciting or twisting as that. So I feel like it has good twists, the show, but it is very predictable. It is. I knew, like I said, in episode 2, when you saw that it was Cliff's first show, and like he was trying to make sure everything was going right. That like, oh, all right, if this is the first guy's show, he'll do anything to make this go right. And you clearly saw that his mom Donna was also that same sort of just like, oh, I'm gonna make sure anything I have to do for my son, I'm gonna do it. Exactly, you know. And so it was just very predictable this season, but as every season. So I did read an interview about the creator of the show, John Hoffman, that he said he purposely made this season a little bit more obvious because he felt like season 2, he said that he wanted each season to be a little bit different, which like, how different can you be with like a typical like who did it? Exactly. But so last season 2 was when they revealed like Tina Fey's assistant was like the girl from the, oh my gosh, what was her name? Cara Della. No. Remember how they had that whole reveal of how Tina Fey's assistant
was the girl that was actually on Tina Fey's podcast episode.
Yes.
So they had that whole and so he says in an interview with the Hollywood Reporter, he goes on to say, like, season 2, they had in the last like 10 minutes of the episode a ton of reveals that were going on, and so they were revealing that and revealing this, and then they did like a fake stabbing to Steve Martin's character, all to show that it ended up being Steve Martin's like girlfriend kind of. And so he said, he's like, I felt that the audience for season 2 had almost too much to catch up on. Like, we were unveiling too much for them to fully take in what was happening. And so he's like, season 3, I wanted to kind of like pump the brakes a little bit more and kind of do more breadcrumbs throughout the season to let people actually come to the decision like themselves, like, okay, it's clear that it's this character. Which I don't fully agree with, because I feel like it's kind of gets a little boring and a little dull then if people can find out too early on.
Yeah.
I also feel like it was a little bit too easy of like who the person was. I think that there were other character options that would have been more interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I know from the beginning, the moment that Meryl Streep like signed on to the show, people were like, "Ooh, Meryl's gonna be the murderer," like, obviously. So then I feel like they couldn't have done that because it would have been too obvious. But I liked that. I liked her character. I do think it would have been fun though if Meryl Streep was the murderer at the end of it.
Yeah, I would have loved to see that acting performance.
Yeah.
To see her, because her character was already kind of twisted.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, but like lovable twisted. It ended up
Yes.
being, you know, and so to see her put on like a, oh no, I'm killing these people actually sort of performance would have been, it would have been cool. But again, like, you're right, it would have been very gimmicky, like with that, to have this big star and to drop that. But do you have the past seasons, were they predictable as much? Was this season even predictable for you? Like,
Yes, this one was predictable. I think the most predictable actually for me was season 2.
Okay.
I think I knew probably, again, I think it's episode 8 where I'm just like, okay, it's this person. Season 1, I thought it was the least predictable.
Okay.
Just because I didn't know how the show was going to go. I also, I think it was just because I hadn't seen fully the kind of diagram that they go through of each episode.
Yeah, it was still kind of new. Yeah.
I was still new to the show, so I wasn't aware of their structure of like, okay, this episode we kind of lead you to believe that it's this person, but then we show you that it's not that person. And then in the next episode, we lead you to think it's this person. Just kidding, it's not that person. So once I saw their structure of season 1, season 2 going in, I was kind of like, okay, so if they're leaning into this character by episode 3, it means it's not that character, because they're not going to reveal it until the last possible second.
Yeah.
And I think the reason season 2 was so obvious is because they had less new characters introduced. So then it was less a smaller pool to pick from. While season 3, they had so many new people come in that I was like, I don't even know who this is, but they could be it.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. But you know what I did like is, what did you think of Paul Rudd's performance?
So I mean, I'm kind of biased. I love Paul Rudd.
I know. I don't think he could do it. Honestly, even if it's a horrible performance, I feel like I still would be like, oh, I loved it.
Yes. But I think that it was a good move to introduce him the way he did. And there was a particular scene in episode 1 where when you find out, oh snap, he's not dead, and he kind of like bursts into like that after party, and he almost has like a monologue sort of, where he reveals like how everyone kind of had everything against him, but that at the same time he's trying to turn a new leaf because of that, and that now he's like, let's let the show go on, like let's do it. And there was something about that monologue alone that really sold me. I feel like it was very strong of them to do that, have that monologue in there, not only for the sake of the story, obviously just to set up like, oh, okay, like he's our murdered person. He's our murdered person. And the fact that, again, like the castmates being the why am I like losing every word?
It's okay.
Case, right?
It's okay.
The murder witnesses, or the suspects. That's the word I'm looking for. The murder suspects. Having them be that, and like seeing it in that one very quick like toward the beginning, still very close to the beginning moment, I feel like it was very good of them to do that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But his character as well was just very lovable.
I know.
Like.
I think he really leaned into like character acting too, which I liked. I thought my favorite part, actually, of the whole season, probably because I didn't see this coming, was them finding out who he was talking to in his dressing room. I really didn't expect that coming at all. That was probably the biggest surprise that this show has ever done for me. Is that the whole time you're thinking like, okay, who's he talking to? Like in the dressing room while he's getting ready, that he's like, I want you so badly, like I like, but get out of here. And meanwhile, it's a cookie. And when he's eating the cookie in the mirror, I thought that performance alone was incredible because there's so many emotions that Paul Rudd is putting into eating this cookie. It's like trauma while being like satisfied, while being like upset with yourself. I don't know. That scene alone, I was like, Paul Rudd stole the season for me.
Season, yes, no, solid performance.
I loved it.
Yes.
Like the cookie for me surprised me more than who the actual murderer was.
Yeah, honestly, I agree with that statement. Only because it was just so unexpected.
I didn't expect it at all.
Yeah, no, I did not expect it.
Like that was clever. It was clever of the writers. It was smart.
And it played so much into his character too, I feel like, because his character was just so unserious, but trying to be serious at the same time. So to set it up as like a serious thing and still have it be so unserious was just so true to character. And I thought, again, that's solid. It was just a solid performance. It was just such a Paul Rudd performance.
It was great.
Yeah, it was great. I also am curious how you felt about his relationship with well, obviously he had a rocky relationship with a lot of people in this season. Everybody. But there was one specific interaction that happened early on that was one of the things that I want to ask you. It was with Steve Martin's character. They had an interaction where he was back in the day on Brazos. Remember that?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah,
wait, I forgot about this.
He was the young kid, and Steve Martin kind of like told him like oh, like you don't really have what it takes, sort of thing, or like he gave him some word of advice that was off-putting. It was nice to him but off-putting, and that kind of affected Paul Rudd's character growing up. And then they have like this really big scene where they kind of like clash at each other. And it's not only that only scene, because they kind of have hostility throughout every interaction that they have together. But there was again one scene where they kind of like, where that was revealed, and like they were kind of very much at head-to-head sort of thing. How did you feel about that specific relationship? Just because there's a reason why I asked you that, but I want to hear what.
Well, obviously for my reaction, I totally forgot about that whole interaction.
It slipped through the cracks.
It kind of slipped through, but I kind of liked it because then I think it checked like Charles' character, because Charles in this season, Steve Martin's character, starts off by being very like chesty and on his high horse of being like a big actor, and I think that kind of brought him down of being like, no, this is an actual real person. So I liked that. I don't know if it did more for me than that.
I could see it not doing more for you in that. I asked that just because.
Yeah, why? Why did you bring that up?
Only because it's like this ongoing theme. And maybe it's just smart. It's just, Steve Martin's character. Maybe it's not anything big at all, to be honest. And it could be nothing moving forward or anything like that. But it almost seems like almost everybody, to be honest, in some way or another has butted heads with Steve Martin's character.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's always been like that since season one. And it's like, it's literally, now I think of it, it's like just about everybody. Because even in this scene, Matthew Broderick, in this season, coming in, and a lot of people weren't too happy with Matthew Broderick in this season. Character-wise. But again, it happened again, where he made I actually wrote it down. He made like a joke, because I think Steve Martin's character was like going to play Ferris Bueller or something like that.
Something, yeah.
He was like, he said, for the millionth time, you would have not made a good Ferris Bueller. You were 41, which I thought was a very funny line. But again, I just noticed that Steve Martin's character, Charles, has a lot of hostility with all of these characters. And I don't know, I just hope that maybe that's something that they play more into.
Yeah.
I like moving forward, hopefully, just because I feel like, again, it could just be to his character. It could just be nothing. It could be nothing at all. But I feel like him not having good relationships with like all of these people, I don't know. I feel like it's such a reoccurring theme. Again, it could be a joke. It could just be a joke.
It could just be the character structure.
But I don't know. I just feel like there's something deeper to it. I don't know. I personally feel like that.
Yeah.
That could be very vague, but I just feel like moving forward, that's something that maybe just needs to be explored more. Maybe that's something that needs to be explored. That's something that I just noticed this season that's been very reoccurring. And I was
that like hit you a lot of like, okay, he's hitting heads with a lot of people.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I actually think that Steve Martin, he does a really nice job of continuing his like character structure and his character quirks from season 1 through season 2 and season 3, because I feel like sometimes when a show starts to get multiple seasons, the actors can lose their nuance of who their character is, and it starts to just develop. They just start to become themselves rather than actually have a character. So I think him and Martin Short are doing a really nice job of like keeping those original characters that they started off in season 1. I can't say the same for Selena Gomez.
Yeah, I agree with that hardcore. I'd say that hardcore, actually, yes.
I think she has lost everything that Mabel was in season 1, and now she's just literally sitting on set like, okay, I'll just say the lines.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, she's just honestly there to represent the younger at this point, like she was from the beginning. And it's, like you said, it's lost a lot of, just because her story isn't as driving to me as the others. Like, I guess her story has in like a romance sort of setting, just because that is a huge storyline.
Each season it's like, who's her love interest, whether like male or female, like it doesn't matter, but why does she always have to have a love interest?
Exactly,
it's like, why is that her storyline? But also I feel like season 1 she did a really nice job of being kind of the hard-edged New York or Brooklyn girl who's like has her beats on and is like wearing like New York fashion, and then all of a sudden season 2 and season 3 she's just kind of like, oh, I love you guys, and very one-noted. So I kind of wish that she would bring back a little bit more of that like hard-edge Mabel, or like, what do they call her, bloody Mabel? Like, bring it back. Bring back that hard-edge New Yorkness.
But you know what, honestly, now that I'm honestly just now thinking about this, to be honest, I'm realizing that season 1, Mabel's story was honestly kind of a driving factor into the mystery.
Yeah.
Because you were finding out a lot of these pieces about Mabel, considering she was kind of like, I think the past 2 seasons, again, are also kind of
they're blurring,
but she was very prevalent in the actual murder scene.
Yeah, she was.
With the guy. I think that because her character's story was so important, and the backstory was so important at that time, and then you got that answer by the end, it's like, now, like you said, like, what else is there to do? Now she is just kind of like a figuring out the mystery.
That's all she is right now.
Exactly. And the love interest, which isn't a strong thing to run on.
No. Or like, if that's the choice to have her kind of be like, I don't know what my life is outside of murder, have her lean into that a little bit more. Like, if that was my life, I'd be going crazy of being like, oh my God, my life is only murder.
Yeah.
Like, let her get a little unhinged then. I think she's kind of just playing it a little bit safe. So I hope that in the next season, even though I'm not super excited about season 4, I hope that she comes back and is like, okay, let's break Mabel out a little bit more.
Yeah. And I think that there's room for them to do that with how season 3 ended. Certain things that were dropped at the end of season 3. Like,
I agree.
Tobert inviting her to go away.
So that was my question for you. Okay, so like our predictions a little bit for season 4, because obviously it just was announced that season 4 has been renewed, so there's going to be a next season. They mentioned California a lot for both Mabel's character and then Oliver's character. I don't know if you caught that, like where Meryl Streep's character was like, well, I'm gonna go to LA to like do like films, and he was like, LA sounds nice to me, and then they like kissed each other. So do you think they're getting out of New York?
I do, to be honest. I don't think it's just gonna be getting out of New York. I think it's gonna be one of those things where they're like playing on both sides sort of thing.
Oh, you think they're gonna do LA and New York?
I think they are, only because I don't think, and maybe it's just me. Maybe it's because it's been in New York and I'm kind of like still like headstrong on having it still kind of be there, certain things. I don't know. I just feel like there's still certain key things in New York that are relevant for sure. But in season 3, they explored like how we spoke about them being separate and things like that, and then coming back. So I think that there are opportunities that might happen in both New York and LA that we'll see happen simultaneously, maybe in season 4, but in some way then they'll kind of meet in either
on other side.
Oh yeah, by the end of that. But I do think that California is going to be a prevalent thing.
I do too. Yeah. I don't know how it's going to tie in, but I think they're definitely going to start doing that. And then to what you were saying about like Steve Martin, Charles' character always kind of hitting heads with other people. I think that is going to be the next kind of storyline for season 4, based on who the next victim is.
Yes.
Or who the victim is, but who the victim was supposed to be. Like, very, very interesting, because obviously this is a huge spoiler. In case you have not seen the final episode, please don't listen to this, because I'm about to say who the next like victim is. It is Charles' stunt double, but she is like walking into Charles's room, and then it's supposed to be Charles who actually is killed. So I think that's going to be a huge topic of like, who's coming after Charles?
I'm telling you, it's just something like, why does he have all of this beef with everybody? You know what I mean? And then for that scene to happen, and I honestly didn't even think about it, because in my head I saw that, I was like, oh man, like Jane Lynch, like
she's done.
Like, dang, oh man. But now that you're saying, like, I forgot that she was his stunt double. So the fact that someone could have been, like, I didn't even fully think about that.
No, it was supposed to be Charles that died, essentially.
Exactly, yeah. So that really now.
No, you got it, Michael. You got it.
Why does he have this beef?
Why does he have this beef, and who is it coming from?
Yes.
And do we think it's going to be somebody new that they introduce, or do you think it's going to be somebody that they've already introduced in like the past that they're now going to bring it in?
I think that they have room. I feel like they could do both, and it could work. I think that if they drive with this whole California thing and we do see both sides, that could very well be room to introduce so many new characters, you know, this whole nother state. But even with that, characters that we've already seen that haven't been present, that maybe because they've been on the other side of the country or things, like there's still room for them to work with that. Like Tina Fey she
keeps popping in.
Yeah, you know?
And she's like, who knows? Maybe she could be relevant. I mean, randomly, we had Amy Schumer in season 2 for like absolutely no reason.
Yes.
Like she wasn't relevant.
Yeah, exactly. And so I definitely think they're going to keep bringing new people on, because at this point, the trend for this show is how many guest celebrities can we get to outdo ourselves. But I don't know. There's so many options. I'm not gonna lie. I'm also equally not as excited, to be honest.
Yeah.
For season 4.
I'm surprised that they got renewed, just because maybe I've heard that people like the show because it's kind of like a comfort show to them. Yeah. It's not meant to be some groundbreaking drama or comedy. Which, did you think that this season was that funny? Considered this is considered and labeled a comedy?
I honestly, I did not, to be honest, but there was one thing that I thought was hilarious. And this is like a hat tip to whoever wrote this in whoever was the writer for this, whenever Steve Martin's character would like really get like into the performance and then he would black out.
Oh, yeah. When he disappeared to the other rooms,
Yeah.
I thought it was very smart.
And then you would come back and everyone would just be like, what was that filth? Like, oh my, you had like no idea. Like that, something about like not seeing that, but just seeing the reactions of everyone.
Mhm.
And then also knowing it was Steve Martin's character who, you know, we've seen in the past 3 seasons is like
very reserved.
Yeah, exactly. Oddly reserved though, you know? And so it was just, that was to me the most funny part of the entire season.
Also great writing because they don't actually have to spell out what happened for us. Exactly. We just have to see the reactions that it was absolutely traumatizing.
Right. They're all like, that was disgusting.
Yeah, like I need to call my therapist.
Right.
I know. I also like really appreciate from like a performer's point of view how they crafted like the blackout or whiteout, because that's totally happened to me before, like on stage. Is all of a sudden, and it happens randomly, all of a sudden you're off stage and you're like, wait a minute, like what did I say the right lines? Like I don't even remember like what just happened. It kind of like my body went on like autopilot. And so I think they did a really nice job of resembling that for people to understand what it's like that haven't actually experienced that.
Yes, definitely. I agree.
But yeah, do you have any other thoughts that you want to wrap up with or that we haven't covered yet?
I'm trying to think about what do you think about, let's talk about, just because this is still a pretty important part of the season, the reveal, the reveal of it being Cliff and Donna, the way they did it in that last episode, having it, be where it was like Donna was so open about everything, which I think, I'm going to ask you first how you felt about that, and then how they played out the whole ending with Cliff and Ben too, with that sort of last push thing. How did you feel about just all of how they ended it exactly and the reveals?
I liked how Donna admitted it just point blank. But then it was like obvious that she didn't do everything because they kept cutting to like Mabel's face, who was like, this doesn't seem right. And so then it was like, okay, well then there's more to this story. And the only other like option of like who it could be is her son. And so I thought it was just like way too obvious to the point that I was like, let's wrap this up. One thing that I was also disappointed with is I felt like they just got the confession and then like nothing happened. They didn't show it being reported on the podcast. They didn't show the police getting involved. They literally didn't show anything. And like also like I just felt like the timeline was very off. Like they're running into like New York court to try to save Meryl Streep's character because she's like currently like in prison. But it's like, you can't just run into court and be like, we think it's this person. And then they release her. Like you needed actual solid evidence. And they hadn't had it at that point because they needed like the confession still. So I felt like it was just very like, oh, we need a confession to like free Meryl Streep, but we don't want to show the confession until like the last possible second. Right, so forget logic. Let's just go for it.
Yes. That's why I brought it up, just because it didn't make a lot of sense to me. And just certain things that happened, like Donna, I feel like she made a comment that she had some sort of cancer. And that like that kind of played a hint that like her really not caring sort of thing. Something like that, I feel like they could have done without. I don't know.
Completely.
Just because not only that, but that really then plays into that idea of I'll do whatever I have to do to make like things happen. And so with the reveal being that quick, and certain things that she was saying, it just like it was so not believable. That it was. They set it up where I don't know. I feel like. It's been like a theme for like them in the last episode to have like this reveal and then be like, oh, twist.
Just kidding. It's not that.
Yeah, but this was the worst way they could have.
It really was bad. And then when Cliff's character is like having the final conversation with Paul Rudd to show that he pushed him, that was the longest scene of my life. Oh my God. I was just like, push him already. Like we know that it's you. And instead they draw it out to be like, you did it. No, you. And like that pushing back and forth. And then it's like the slow-mo of the whole thing. And I was just like, please end this already.
And I guess that goes back to how you were saying, like, it was kind of done intentionally with like the breadcrumbs to like,
that they wanted people to know, but then it's like
that's too slow.
you don't care at a certain point because you're like, I know what happened.
I knew in episode 2.
And then like also the whole drama of like all of them running up to like save him because he's like about to jump off of like the ledges in the theater. I was just like, I was like, who cares? Like, we know that it was him and we know that he's going to get arrested. And although like, I think if they had kept it going and like, I don't know, actually, I don't know how they could have made it better.
I don't either. Just because like, and again, this was said before, it's just how much can you really do at this point? And so it I don't know. It wasn't. I'm definitely at that place too, though.
I just don't know how many seasons they can do.
Exactly. Now it's just kind of it is becoming gimmicky.
It is. It's like, well, I'm literally at the point where I'm like, okay, I'll watch the first episode to get the premise, and then usually like 2 through 7, I'm kind of doing the like half scrolling on my phone, half paying attention, and then all of a sudden I look up and I'm like, okay, so they just proved it's not that person. Great. Next episode, not that person. Okay. I think if they can just go back to like making the podcast relevant and making sure, which they did, made sure that the murder is actually in the building.
Yeah.
It'll help it a little bit more, but I don't know. We'll have to see what the next season brings us, which it probably won't be out for like another year and a half.
It'll be a while. Yeah.
But overall, so you would say this is your least favorite season?
This was my least favorite season. I agree with you. I think you said the first season was your favorite.
That was my favorite.
I agree. I think just because it was such a new thing, and there was so much room to still figure out with these characters. So yeah, season 3 for me, it wasn't it. It didn't fully have my attention. I loved certain performances, I loved, but
not overall.
Overall, it was. How about you? Overall?
No, I agree. This is probably this was the most boring season for me. Season 1's my favorite. I think it's really good and entertaining. And then season 2 kind of dipped for me, and now season 3, I was just like, oh my god, I don't know. I don't know where this can go.
Yeah. Unless they kill one of them off.
Ooh. I don't know if they'll do that, though.
I don't think they will.
No, they were close, though. They almost killed Charles.
They were. But there's still room.
There's still room for it. There's still room.
Find out in season 4.
Find out in season 4 of Only Murders, everyone.
Yes.
Well, I think that concludes our conversation on season 3 of Only Murders in the Building, which is fully now on Hulu. So if you find our conversation, I know we ragged on it a little bit, but if you like the show, let us know where you think we're wrong in the comments. And check out some other episodes on our page where we're not ragging on other shows that we were fans of. So just signing off right now. I am Liz Seiko.
And I'm Michael Peniston.
And thanks for watching.